Awesome. Hey guys, welcome to my weekly Wednesday live. I know today is Tuesday, but the 4th of July is Wednesday, so we're going to take care of this morning, and then I'll upload it on YouTube as always so you guys can watch it after the fact. Today I'm doing a second part of what I talked about last week. So you might remember last week that I talked about how you should structure your training if your primary goal is to build muscle. Today I'm going to talk about the flip side of that, which is how you should structure your nutrition if you're trying to build muscle. So while training is definitely the most important stimulus if you're trying to build muscle, nutrition is really important. It can be really frustrating to be working your butt off in the gym and doing all the right things and just not seeing any progress because you're not giving your body the fuel that it needs. And the bottom line is that if you're not giving your body raw materials, it doesn't have anything that it can build new tissue with. If you're relatively new to training, you might experience some body recomposition where you lose a little bit of fat and you gain muscle without having to change your intake as much. But most people that have been working out for a while, if they're trying to build muscle, they're going to need to eat a little bit more. So there are kind of two ways that this can play out. So the first way that I see a lot is, especially with younger men, this happens a lot, people that are really naturally thin and are just not eating enough to really gain muscle. And in my experience, a lot of these people aren't really aware of how much they truly need to eat. I've met with new clients and I've had them do food journals and stuff with me, and a lot of times people are skipping meals. Maybe they just don't get hungry, or they're able to power through their hunger. When they are eating, they're getting so full that they're not eating again for many hours. And if you're someone with a really fast metabolism, you're naturally skinny, you're going to need to be eating a lot more regularly in order to get in the calories that you need. So I have a few strategies to help you with this. So the first strategy is to eat smaller meals. Now, you might have heard the myth that if you eat 6 small meals a day, it stokes your metabolism, and that's not really why I recommend this. That's not exactly true. That's a topic for another conversation, excuse me. But the benefit to eating smaller meals is that you can eat more frequently, you can get in more calories, and you're not going to be as full. So if you're eating like 3,000 calories in 2 meals, you're going to be really full in most cases, especially if you're eating primarily nutritious and whole foods, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But if you're eating those 3,000 calories and they're spaced out between 6 smaller meals, you're going to be a lot less full. You're going to have a much easier time getting all that food down without feeling sick or overly full and all those uncomfortable feelings. Now, you might still experience some of that, but it should be a lot more manageable. So that would be my first strategy for you, is if you're having trouble eating enough food, eat smaller meals and eat more regularly throughout the day. Now, in order to make that happen, you might want to set some alarms on your phone. This can also be helpful if you're someone who just forgets to eat, which is a problem that I've never had, but I know a lot of people do. Every couple of hours, have a reminder alarm on your phone that says, okay, it's time to eat a meal now, it's time to eat a snack. That can kind of get you out of wherever you are in your head, wherever you are with work, and make sure that you're getting in those calories. So that would be my first recommendation. If you're still struggling, you're feeling overly full, you're unable to eat what you need to eat, you can have a lot of success adding in some liquid meals. So things like having some protein shakes or having a smoothie, stuff like that. Liquid calories are just a lot easier to get down. They're not going to fill you up the same. They don't trigger the same satiety mechanisms in your brain that tell you to stop eating. So you can start by having a liquid meal during or around your workouts, maybe before you work out or after you work out. And if you're still having trouble, you're still trying to get in more food, then you could add them in at other times during the day. But I would start by doing it around your workout, because that's when you want to be getting in a lot of calories to fuel your workout and then to recover from your workout. So those are just a few strategies to eat a little bit more. Now, on the flip side of this, some people are probably taking the eating a lot to build muscle a little bit too far. So in my blog post this week at the end, I mentioned that if you're not already relatively lean, you might consider going on like a short diet, or they call it a mini cut in the bodybuilding world, just to get a little bit leaner before you try to add muscle. And the reason for this is that when you're leaner, when you have less body fat, your body is more receptive to building muscle. So if you're consuming extra calories and training hard, you're actually more likely to store those calories as muscle to build new muscle tissue than if you're overweight. If you're pretty overweight and you're eating a lot of excess calories, you're actually going to store more of that as fat, even if you're training hard, which is kind of an unfortunate reality. But how do you know if this is you? It's difficult to say, but if you feel like you have a lot of weight to lose and you do want to build muscle, muscle, I would probably do the weight loss first. Now, if you're sort of lean, and you don't really care about being that much leaner and you feel like you're in a good place with your health, then you can go ahead and try to build muscle. But I would just be cautious about this, because you can really dig yourself into a hole when you're eating above your maintenance calories, but your body's not helping you out. It's not storing that as muscle. So just something for you to consider. In terms of how many calories you should eat, I would just start off trying to eat a little bit more at all of your meals. If you're not someone that counts calories, if you do count calories, you can use calculators and stuff to figure this out. But I would just try to eat, to the point of fullness or slightly past full at every meal. Maybe add in some extra meals, as I already said, and train hard and see where that takes you. And if you don't have any progress, then you need to eat more, bottom line. And if you're putting on too much body fat, you're not liking the way that you look, then maybe you need to readjust what you're doing. So that's about the amount of food that you should be eating. So what about if you, what kinds of food should you be eating? So when you're trying to build muscle, you definitely have a little bit more leeway with the high quality nutritious foods versus junk food and stuff like that. Especially if you're someone that's struggling to eat a lot of food, eating some higher calorie foods, some junkier foods, those again will not make you as full. So you definitely have some room to do that. But just from a health standpoint and from a long-term nutrition habit standpoint, I would still encourage you to try to eat at least 80% of your calories from mostly nutritious foods. So whole foods, proteins, carbs, healthy fats, lots of fruits and vegetables, and then maybe about 20% for treats and junk food or eating out with friends. I think that's a good ratio. That'll give you a little bit of wiggle room. It'll help you get in some extra calories, but you're not going to go totally off the deep end if you sort of stick with that. So I would recommend, when you're trying to build muscle, unless you really know for certain that you're someone who really thrives on a high-fat diet, I would encourage you to take more of a high-carb approach. And there are a few reasons for this. So I already talked last week about how you really need to work hard in the gym to build muscle. You need to be challenging yourself. A lot of times your workouts will be a little bit longer if you have the time for that, more frequent. You're going to be challenging your muscles with intensity techniques and things like that. And carbs are going to help you fuel those types of workouts a little bit better. When your body's doing highly metabolic workouts like that, carbs are going to be the preferred fuel source. So if you're trying to do low carb and build muscle, you could potentially be digging yourself into a hole with your training that's going to lead to burnout and excessive fatigue and all kinds of other things that you don't want to have to deal with. So I would encourage you from that standpoint alone to eat more carbs. And then just in general, carbs are going to be for most people, they're going to help you build a little bit more muscle. So don't be afraid of carbs, especially around your workout. And honestly, if you're trying to build muscle and you're trying to get in more calories, I would eat some with pretty much every meal. You can do carb cycling and stuff like that, but that's a little more advanced technique. For just someone who's getting started, I would not be afraid of carbs. Protein is also super important. There's kind of a range, and there's some disagreement about this in the industry, but as a general recommendation, I would try to get 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. I think that's a pretty good approach for most people. So you don't necessarily need to eat dry chicken breasts and tilapia all the time. I mean, if you like those foods, that's fine, but there's so many different protein options that you can get. Don't be afraid to try different things. Generally, a leaner protein might be a better option for a lot of people, but even higher fat steaks and stuff like that can play a role. Fish, when you're trying to build muscle. So experiment and try all different types of protein sources. And then in terms of healthy fats, you just fill in the rest of your diet with that. You can have a little bit with every meal. Again, if you're someone who knows for sure that you need a little bit more fat to perform your best, you can keep that a little higher and carbs a little lower. But I would probably, for most people that are trying to build muscle, I would skew more towards higher carbs and a little bit lower fat. Okay, so that's in terms of what you should be eating. So mostly quote-unquote clean foods. I don't really like that phrase, but lots of good quality protein, lots of healthy carbs, lots of fruits and vegetables, and then a little bit of room for treats and stuff like that. And then one more piece, it's not related to food, but it is very, very important when you're trying to build muscle, is that you really need to prioritize sleep. Now, sleep is important for all of us, But when you're sleeping, you're recovering better from your workouts, and you're giving your body time to lay down new muscle tissue. So if you're doing a big push and you're working hard in the gym and you're eating enough calories, and then you're sleeping like 5 or 6 hours a night, you're really doing yourself a big disservice. So if you're really, really serious about building muscle, I would really do everything you can to try to get at least like 7.5 hours of sleep a night. 7.5 is a good sweet spot. If you can get more some nights, or you can take a nap, that would also be awesome. But if you know for sure that you can only get like 4 or 5 hours of sleep, you might have some progress, but your progress is going to be slower. So just be aware of that, and be cautious with your workouts. You don't want to overdo it and again dig yourself into a hole. So just to summarize, talking today about nutrition for building muscle. First things first, you have to eat a lot of food. How much food is dependent on the person. If you're someone who's really naturally skinny and you tend to skip meals and you have a hard time gaining weight, then you probably will need to eat more food than someone who's naturally maybe a little bit heavier or isn't as lean as they would like to be. So play it by ear. If you have trouble eating enough food, try eating smaller meals more frequently throughout the day. Try including liquid calories, and try including some higher calorie foods just to get a little bit of extra volume in there for you. I would encourage you to eat most of your foods from healthy whole food sources, but you definitely have some wiggle room to eat out and eat treats and stuff like that. But keep an eye on your body and how you're responding, and if you think things are getting a little out of hand, then you might need to dial that stuff in a little bit. But this is all personal preference. Don't be afraid of carbs. Carbs are really going to help you out. I would eat plenty of carbs, especially around your workout. If you're trying to build muscle, eat lots of protein, and then eat at least a little bit of healthy fats every day. Some people will need a little bit more than others. That's just a personal preference thing. And then last but not least, make sure you're getting enough sleep. If you're not sleeping, you're going to have a really hard time recovering from your workouts, and you're not going to build as much muscle as if you were well rested. If you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot me a DM or pop in the comments. And thanks for watching. I will see you next week. Have a great 4th of July.